this past weekend, Netflix released the latest SpongeBob movie. Now it's time to rank all 5 SpongeBob movies from the worst to the best. In last place is Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie. The plot is boring and uninteresting. The live action doesn't blend well at all with the CGI, unlike the first movie. The villain's motivations and plan are stupid, and I find it hypocritical that the film is portraying wanting to merchandise the SpongeBob characters as an evil plan, even though Nick has been doing the same thing for 25 years. In fact, this movie's very existence is an example of that. I can't remember any particularly funny jokes or moments or anything quotable. The Sandy Cheeks movie is scraping the bikini bottom of the barrel. Number 4, Sponge on the Run. This is going to sound like a contradiction, but if I had to sum up my thoughts on this movie, it would be, it's amusing, but it's weak. On a story level, it's basically the plot of the first movie all over again. SpongeBob and Patrick go on a road trip to retrieve a stolen item, except this time the item belongs to SpongeBob. His pet snail Gary has been stolen by King Neptune. It's a weak premise, it feels stale. That being said, the animation is pretty good. At first, it's a bit unnerving to see the characters in CGI form, but in some ways it works to the movie's advantage. It allows for more expression, more energy, and a more immersive experience than traditional 2D animation. But, let's be honest, this movie is basically a long commercial for Paramount+. The third act is essentially a pilot episode for Camp Coral, the SpongeBob spinoff that was released around the same time. And there are a few major problems with that, other than the fact that that show was now cancelled. The biggest one, and the one that angers me the most, is that Nickelodeon put this spinoff into production almost immediately after SpongeBob's creator Steven Hillenburg passed away. They took advantage of the fact that he was no longer around to approve or reject their ideas, and they just kept milking his legacy for profit. The other big issue? The third act completely ignores the continuity of the main show. It rewrites SpongeBob's history, claiming he met Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs at camp. But in the very first episode of the show, we see him meet Sandy for the first time. Now the movie throws that out the window and says, nope, they've known each other since they were kids. That's just disrespectful and lazy. They were so eager to push out a spinoff, they didn't even bother to keep it consistent with the main show. That is something I cannot excuse. As frustrating as the third act is, though, I won't lie. Some parts of it are entertaining. Honestly, someone has to get Keanu Reeves an aspirin, because I'm sure his back hurts from carrying this entire movie. His scenes are the best part. He gets some genuinely funny lines, and he delivers the best jokes in the film. There's also another celebrity cameo in the middle of the second act I won't spoil for you, but it had me laughing. Granted, that scene slows the film down, and also has nothing to do with the rest of the story, but it's still pretty entertaining. As much as this movie has its fun moments, I simply cannot forgive Nickelodeon for shamelessly exploiting Hillenburg's legacy and going against his wishes, waiting for it to pass before doing whatever they wanted with SpongeBob. Shame on you, Nickelodeon. You disgust me, and you owe his family an apology. Number 3, Sponge Out of Water. Well, I guess the nicest thing I can say about this one is, it's passable. It's not horrible. But, I'll be honest, it's a step down from the first film. The first movie had a plot and stakes that felt like a real movie. Something that was justified going to theaters. It was big, it was cinematic. This one, it's really small scale. It feels more like a really long episode, and honestly, it probably would have worked better as a TV movie. The biggest issue is that it's super unfocused. It has almost no idea what it wants to do. At first, it's about this pirate played by Antonio Banderas who wants to steal the Krabby Patty formula. Because, you know, you haven't seen trying to steal the Krabby formula in every other SpongeBob episode. That leads into a 10-minute time travel plotline to get it back, which is just a bunch of nothing. Then out of nowhere, there's a 30-minute storyline where the main characters become superheroes, and frankly, it's a bit too much, too chaotic. There are some nice, clever jokes and visual gags. A lot of references like to Mad Max and some little sharp 2 or 3 second bits that are fun. These moments keep the film watchable, not super painful. But story-wise, it's weak, it's unfocused, it doesn't even feel like a plot, just a bunch of stuff happening against a backdrop of visual gags. The first SpongeBob movie was a great example of a family movie. This one, definitely a kid's movie. It's not as smart or clever as the first movie, or even the best of SpongeBob's earlier episodes, but let's be real, SpongeBob has put out worse, dumber stuff. I still take this over a lot of the episodes that are coming out now. It'll entertain your kids for 90 minutes. It's not bad for them, but this time around, there's not much for the parents. Our runner-up is Plankton, which was a very pleasant surprise. I was very worried about this movie because, as you can see by this ranking, the last 3 SpongeBob movies were all pretty mixed to negative, especially because that previous SpongeBob movie focusing on Sandy, as I've already said, was really, really bad. But despite the declining quality of SpongeBob over the years, Plankton is the one consistently funny element to it, which makes sense, since Plankton's voice actor wrote quite a few episodes of the first 2 seasons. And yeah, a Plankton movie is actually really, really funny. The writing, jokes, and visual gags all feel in line with some of the best of SpongeBob's 4 seasons, which again makes sense, since Plankton's voice actor was also one of the co-writers for this movie. There were a ton of jokes that I thought were hilarious, which is more than I can say for the other SpongeBob movie sequels that, at their best, gave me a mild chuckle. There's a lot of throwbacks to classic SpongeBob episodes, such as Plankton's Army, Sweet Victory, and even the first SpongeBob movie. This is a musical, and the songs have a nice amount of time between them. There weren't any where I thought, really? We just had a song, can we move on? And the songs are really, really catchy and great. There weren't any that I was waiting to be over. They're all really clever and funny. The musical numbers each have a distinct musical and animation style, which gives them a nice variety and helps them stand out, not blend together. For example, one of Plankton's songs is animated in a rubber hose style, has a musical tone that feels like it's from that era. Karen's song is, of course, techno, and one of the songwriters was Mark Mothersbaugh, who was part of the band Devo, and you can kind of tell the Devo influences from Karen's villain song. It felt very Devo to me. Making Karen the main villain this time around was a nice, fresh idea. I realized with this movie that Karen and Plankton are a lot like Draken and Shigo from Kim Possible. Plankton and Draken are both slightly incompetent megalomaniacs obsessed with destroying their archenemy, and Karen and Shigo are the real evil geniuses who hate having to put up with them, especially after they always fail. And much like that one Kim Possible movie, where Kim and Ron visit the future where Shigo has gotten rid of Draken and taken over herself, Karen does manage to just say,
"Fine. I'll do it myself."
There are a few story issues, mainly with previously established continuity. It's implied that Plankton's first time trying a Krabby Patty and becoming obsessed with getting the formula or at the Krusty Krab. There's a whole episode showing that Mr. Krabs and Plankton created the patty together as kids. Karen knows Plankton's first name is Sheldon after he creates her, even though there was an episode where she finds out his name is Sheldon and laughs at him. Then again, SpongeBob has never had much firm continuity, and these aren't major issues like that SpongeBob the Run movie, where it says SpongeBob and Sandy met his kids at summer camp, even though the first episode of the show they met an entirely different way. I can excuse that. There's also not really that much difference between the movie and typical episode of the show. The first SpongeBob had a massive scale and story that could have only worked as a film. This one kind of feels like a long TV special. In something like the Rugrats movie or the Bob's Burgers movie, the plots feel cinematic when the stakes are much bigger than an episode of the show, which is a problem with a lot of movies based on shows. Unfortunately, they often feel like longer episodes of shows.
Boring!
Dad, we can't see the movie.
I can't believe we're paying to see something we get on TV for free. If you ask me, everybody in this theater is a giant sucker. Especially you!
Despite some very minor narrative issues, the Plankton movie is great for adults who grew up with the heyday of SpongeBob and the kids who watch it now. It's a welcome return to the pineapple, or I guess in this case, the chum bucket, under the sea. And in first place is the original SpongeBob movie from 2004. Oh my word, even as a standalone movie and not connected to the show, this has to be one of the best family films ever made. And yes, folks, it takes the time to introduce the characters for those who have never watched the show. You can still go into this not having seen a single episode and still follow what's going on. The characters are well established, and the story stands on its own. You can also tell this was given a movie-level budget. The animation is incredibly smooth and vibrant. Unlike a lot of movies based on shows, like the Hey Arnold movie, which just felt like a longer episode, this actually has a cinematic-level story and cinematic-level actors. Scarlett Johansson is in this movie as Minnie the Mermaid. David Hasselhoff makes a cameo as himself. It's also surprisingly darker than a typical episode of the show. There's a scene that plays like a zombie movie, with monsters that would be a little scary for kids, and Alec Baldwin voicing a really intense, bloodthirsty bounty hunter. There's even a diver called the Cyclops by the Bikini Bottom citizens. While that villain is more of a joke, the first scene of the Cyclops could definitely be a bit intense for younger kids. As for the humor, both kids and adults will get a lot out of this. This movie is hilarious, some of the sharpest writing in any family movie. There's even a parody of I Wanna Rock by Twisted Sister. Honestly, I'd say this is one of the most perfect family movies ever. Originally, this was meant to be the series finale, but since SpongeBob was still insanely popular, Nickelodeon decided to keep it going, even without the show's creator Steven Hillenburg, rest in peace. And yeah, after this movie, the show really went downhill. This should have been the ending. It would have been perfect. The SpongeBob SquarePants movie is a great movie for kids, and for the kid and all of us, and it comes in at number 1. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and comment with your ranking of the SpongeBob movies. Also, a couple years ago, I did reviews of all the theatrically released Nickelodeon movies, as well as a handful of the TV ones. You can check out that playlist over there, and I'll see you next time.